Yep, live.
There we go.
Sweet.
Okay, I will start asking the questions. Discuss the following with your group. Discuss the pros and cons in great depth for all of the candidates. Oh, wait, I'm supposed to give you a summary of this case. Do I need to give you a summary of this case?
I think we've got it.
Okay, because it's a really long summary.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah, maybe we
Okay.
can just say that Peter was looking to leave and they were looking to hire someone new.
Right, and the one gal, the second was filling in.
Yep.
Rena was
Yep.
filling in for the time being. So do we each want to take like one person and give some pros and cons?
Sure, that works. Okay, how about I take Gerald? Okay, so Gerald Baum. He's a current analyst at Gotts and Loeb on Wall Street since 1998. So from what I gathered, this was like from 2002 or 2003. That kind of the timing, this article?
Yeah, 2003 is when this is supposed to be.
All right. So pros that I put down, he's driven. He has a personality that wants to cover more exciting industries. He's really pleasant. He enjoys working in large institutions. Clients would move with him with his exceptional client services, including the knowledge of the industry, his service, his stock picking, and his report writing skills. He's currently ranked 11th out of the 100 for the II, and he's only been in the field for 18 months, and he's extremely intelligent. His cons that outweigh his pros.
Yeah.
He showed up late for the interview, 15 minutes late. He showed a negative attitude about his current workplace. He wants to handpick his own junior analysts and not use the existing ones that are already at RSH. Not enough innovative research. Immediate concerns about stock options and compensation. He immediately wanted to know how much he was going to get paid, what the options were for his stocks. No commitment to loyalty. He was pretty upfront that he wanted to move where he was going to be appreciated. The second interview kind of showed that he had some attitude quirks, including treating the staff terribly. The clients love him, but the staff, they don't get along with him. He portrayed cockiness, too cocky. The other leaders kind of were concerned that he was changing firms too much, and he really didn't show signs of wanting to be a team player, but he liked to work more independently, and that doesn't really mesh with the RSH way of doing business. So that's kind of what the pros and cons were about Gerald.
I think that's a pretty good summary.
I agree.
Yeah. No,
Yep.
that was a lot.
Make me feel terrible about what I came up with.
I know. Me too.
Okay.
So I'll take David if you want.
Okay.
We're ready to move on. So David, I actually was kind of attracted to him, the way the story was written. I feel like he was upfront and honest. He wanted to leave, after 15 years of the same job, just kind of wanted a change of scenery. I also like the fact that he wanted to bring his two junior analysts with him. I feel like that is a sense of loyalty that he showed to them. And I think that's a good thing. And I feel the conversation went smoothly, which I actually think is also a potential con. I know it felt like he was kind of the one doing the interviewing there for a little while, and it seemed like he had all the right answers. So I don't know if it's because he was seasoned or he's older. It mentioned he's older. But it almost at a point, I think it said that Steven kind of felt like he was being the one interviewed as opposed to doing the interviewing.
But don't
So
you
he
feel
really
like
treated it
don't you feel like when you're good though, you can kind of choose where you're gonna go?
Mhm.
and that's why I kind of liked him. I like I said, I was kind of Team David until I started reading about the rest of them initially, but I just kind of gravitated towards him. I like kind of who he was, and the fact he's a little older. I know it was a concern, but you know he's been doing good recently, and I didn't see a lot of cons, to be honest. I mean, there were just a couple that I got, so maybe I'm missing some more, but that's pretty much what I thought of David.
Well,
Michael, I think you and I are going to get along just fine this week.
Okay. You just don't want to get locked out of next week's meeting again.
So
Uh,
this probably won't come as a surprise, but I actually
You
had
don't like
he was originally, I was originally Team David, I will admit. And then as I
Okay.
started reading about other people, and as I read more about him, I changed my opinion. So I do think he's absolutely fabulous. And had they had the chance to hire him 10 years ago, I would have picked him out of anyone immediately. But I know what this line of work entails because this was like my dream job. And I actually got an official job offer from Goldman Sachs and everything like that. And when I actually started going through the process, I ended up having to turn it down because as I understood more in depth the amount of travel that's involved, the amount of time that's involved, I came to the realization that I just couldn't manage that and be a single mom and go to school and all those other things. And he's getting older. And because he's getting older, I think that this is going to start to weigh on him. The travel schedule. And it also said that he had started cutting back his travel schedule. And if he's cutting back his travel schedule, he's used to doing old school. The other thing that it talked about as well too is that he doesn't like using the new technology because he's not comfortable with it. And it also talked about as well too that he's not very good at proofreading his own writing. And so he's used to having other people proofread his writing for him, which he's been able to get away with because he is so amazing at what he does. But I think as time goes by, I think within a couple of years, they're going to start regretting bringing him on board. My other concern with him too is his credibility. So right now he's at the top of his game and he's got tons of credibility. But as he starts getting a little bit older, which he's not too far off from, it sounds like, I don't know exactly what his age is, but it sounded like he's past 50 something. Because they said that most analysts are up to about 50. So then they started talking about that he might lose his credibility with the buyers. And if he loses credibility there, then he could potentially lose a lot of business for the company. So while I think he's amazing right now, I think 5 years from now, they may be regretting it and they're looking to hire somebody super long term.
And he didn't mention that he didn't take a call with his because he was with his family or his grandkids or something like that as well. That
Yep, exactly. He was on vacation with them. And
Yeah,
so
I
he
like that.
out.
Yeah.
He
I was
did
like,
tweet it
yeah.
out afterwards, but
Team David.
so I do like David, and like I said, had it been like 10 years earlier, he's totally the one I would have gone with. But given that there's a time difference, I'm just worried, and they look to hire super long term. If they were looking to hire someone shorter term, then I would go for him still. But I think within 5 years, they're going to regret it. So anyways.
I can take Sonia.
Okay.
So Sonia, some of her pros is a lot of her clients see her as a very true up-and-comer. They see that she's very talented. She's accomplished a ton without having much for assistants or juniors to work with. Most of what she's accomplished has kind of been on her own. And so she's really led the way. She's very good at reports, and she's very good with her clients, and she communicates extremely well, which is huge in her line of work. And of all the interviewees, she was pretty much the only one who was actually interested in the job itself rather than the perks of the job. So I think her interview went the best out of all of them. And then I think, I'm sure there's some more pros. I think the biggest con is that she's a mom of 2 young kids, and her job will require her to travel a lot. She doesn't like to travel very much. I guess a pro is that she's been able to kind of navigate in between that and be able to work around traveling, and she's made good relationships so that she's able to do that, and hold conference calls and things like that. And another con was that she was very interested in like the global reach efforts, which was something that they were really wanting to pursue. And so she showed a lot of interest in what they wanted, and she was excited about the team type of culture that is it SRH or something?
RSH.
RSH, yeah, that they offer. And so her cons are that she's a mom of 2 young kids, and that will it could affect her performance and her ability to travel, and working from home could be difficult to be productive. And then another con was that she just doesn't have really the high level experience that they're hoping for. She's been working for a boutique. I don't know what that means, but it doesn't sound very big. So
It's basically the same thing as what Wall Street does, only on a real small scale. It's way more personalized.
Okay. So yeah, that's all I got.
Slower paced.
So oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So I actually liked her. She was the one afterwards that I ended up choosing. I feel like she was like a real go-getter. I thought she came very prepared to the interview. She wanted to interview some other female analysts. She kind of asked questions that Stephen really hadn't ever contemplated about gender and different employees there. I feel like she was the kind of the biggest gamble of all of them, but she could also prove to have the largest reward as well. So that it was kind of intriguing to me. Like I said, I was all team David, and then I'm writing this, and then the last second I just picked her. So that's who I ended up with.
I actually picked her too.
So, what?
Me too.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
This is the first. Halfway through the class, and we agreed.
So,
Do you guys want me to tell about Seth?
yeah, go right ahead.
So I thought he was a lot more humble. He didn't have as much experience as the others, but he seemed really excited about every opportunity he had, like excited to get an interview, excited to have a second interview. He worked hard at the company that he was at, but never got really recognized for that. And he was at that position for 15 years. So that's kind of a long time and never get any recognition for that. But when he went to like the second interview, everybody loved him and said that it was just like whenever he talked, you just got the same enthusiasm for the work that he had. And he had worked with PowerChip and had a good connection with them, and that's the project that they were currently working on. So that's kind of, to me, a big plus in his favor. But I don't really know. I think just maybe he didn't have as much experience as the other ones was the downside, but I didn't really see anything that was like a total red flag, like don't hire him because he's, this or that.
See, I kind of had a negative feeling towards him and some other things that really stuck out as red flags to me with him. Yeah. He, so first of all, he's in my mind, he's the wild card. He's the one that makes me the most scared. And having hired a wild card once before and it blew up in my face, I'm really hesitant about wild cards. So I feel like, number one, they haven't been able to interview or communicate with anybody who works with him. So they don't know how he actually interacts with other people. And when you come to an interview, it's like a first date. You totally put your best foot forward. And so I feel like he is probably a really, really nice guy. But the other hesitation I have is when you read down it further in his profile, it talked about that his firm has software that allows them to collect thorough information on each of the analysts so that they can create a profit and loss statement for each one of them so they know exactly how much money each one of them is bringing to the company. Now, on top of that, when he came to the interview, he had a whole bunch of client referrals from clients saying that he was great and amazing. And he said that he was using it specifically to try and get a promotion, which obviously didn't come through because he's now interviewing somewhere else. And so my thoughts is if they have a profit and loss statement that's very accurate, that shows exactly what he's bringing in and not bringing into the company, and even with those referrals, they chose not to give him a raise or increase his pay, I'm thinking that profit and loss statement's probably pretty valuable and probably is a really good reflection that he's not truly the star that they're hoping for, and that he just had a really lucky year at that point to bump him up into the category for the first time in 15 years. The other thing too is it also talked about that the company has a prepackaged financial information software that the analysts can use. And if he relies heavily on that instead of making his own decisions, then that could also potentially sway, I think, their decision in giving him a raise. Because if he's relying heavily on just this software and not his gut and his own instincts from kind of understanding the market, that could potentially be why they haven't given him a raise either. So in my mind, I think he's a really, really nice guy, but I don't know that he's the star analyst that they're looking for. Oh, and the other thing too that stood out. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say is he's not balancing his life and his other things very well, because he got divorced because he couldn't balance things very well. And it said that was specifically the cause of the divorce. Yeah. And then it talked about that he's constantly on the phone with clients, and he'll take calls even in the middle of the night from clients. So he has no real balance there. And I think, at least from I've seen perspective wise, when you have employees that have no balance in their life, it starts reflecting and coming through in the job force for them. And so I think that's what will happen for him too. Anyway, sorry, continue with what you were going to say.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, it was for those reasons that I kind of felt bad for him. I was like, he's worked so hard. He lost his wife and he was, middle class, and his family worked really hard to get him through school. And so I kind of had this soft spot for him, oh, the poor guy.
Yep.
I mean, not to say that he's the right one. I just felt bad for him.
I totally feel bad for him, and I think he's a really nice guy, but I would never hire him.
And the fact that he had the packet prepared as well, I thought that was a little strange. It showed how unready he kind of was for that big stage.
Yep.
I feel like he is just all about pleasing people. I don't think he even knows who he is. And I think that's his problem, is that he's trying to gauge what he does according to what he thinks you want him to do. I don't think that he has a strong enough core inside him to make him tick without influence of others around him. I absolutely would not choose him. He just came across as this flippant people pleaser, and no. No.
I hope nobody picked him this week.
Calvin, you're being awfully quiet. You okay there?
Yeah, I liked him. I picked Sonia, but he was kind of my second choice.
He was my second choice too. Because I felt bad for him.
I just thought he works hard, and I didn't want to pick the old guy and the cocky guy. So.
Right.
Yeah, I feel bad for him, and I think he's a nice guy, and he could fit well in another position, but not this position.
The other person that we could touch on was that Rena Shia. I mean, even though she wasn't officially, she still had an opportunity. Does anyone want to talk about her?
Yeah, I can talk about her if you want. Oh,
yeah,
what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say there wasn't a whole lot to say about her, but go ahead. Say what you want.
Yeah, there's only a tiny bit. So for Rena, I think the way that he did this was really, really smart because they needed somebody to kind of fill those shoes temporarily. But I think he was really, really wise in approaching her and saying, I can't guarantee I'm going to give you this position. It's just temporary. I think that was extremely
Agreed.
on his part. But what it talked about is that she's really, really smart. She's really good in the technology industry. She knows her stuff. But it also talked about some of her downfalls was that she wasn't good at being able to communicate and express that in presentations and come across assertive enough when she was presenting to have people buy into her stuff she was selling. The reality is, I mean, a salesman has to be able to be like, my stuff's amazing. Here's why it's amazing. You need to go with it, and come across completely confident in their abilities. Because if they don't, no one's going to want to go with them, especially as far as buy, sell, and with the sellers, because you're looking at banks, and banks want somebody that knows exactly what they're talking about and is confident in that. And she doesn't come across as that, but she is really talented, but just not for this position either.
I agree with that. Okay, so the next question is, who would you hire and why? So didn't we kind of all say who we would hire and why?
I think we all said, several of us said Sonia, so that's who I'm going with.
I think Suzanne went David. Us three went Sonia. Who'd you choose, Jennifer?
Sonia.
Okay, so 4 Sonias and 1 David. Oh, she's got her hand up.
I actually put a twist on mine.
Okay.
Because, after reading that second article, the Harvard review about, the different types of stars and why you should avoid getting a star, you should build your own stars. I was thinking, what if we did this? What if we hired David, who was training up our friend Rena here? Keep her on because, there was a comment that, oh man, Peter's leaving and I don't have anybody who knows that job because Peter was it. Well, so what if we have David and Rena doing it, and David becomes the mentor because David said he was really comfortable being a mentor. So he mentors Rena and Rena gets, excuse me, dog. He gets jealous. Okay. Anyway, so that way Rena gets the experience that she needs. She's got this mentor. He kind of molds her into this perfect analyst. So that's kind of what I put. Don't hire 1, hire 2.
Okay, so mine was actually similar to yours, only with Sonia and Rena.
Okay.
So my thoughts behind it is to bring Sonia on, but keep Rena and give her the promotion that they promised her, because they said they were talking about splitting the department up and giving her a smaller portion of it. And I think she could handle a smaller portion of it, just not that full scope, especially with the section that they're using so much of the whole company revenue to create out of that one. And so just give her a small little portion and give her the chance to then learn how to do it really, really well, and then potentially expand her division as she gets better at it. But then with Sonia, my thoughts were, I did have some concerns with her. So my thoughts were is bring her on board, but then number one, tell her, because she was super shocked about the price, about the income she could be making. So, and that was something that was a big concern of theirs, is they didn't want to get super top heavy there. And especially if they were going to keep Rena at the pay raise they'd given her. And so by keeping Rena at the pay raise they gave her and allowing her to have her own little division within that group, then they could offer Sonia less because she's obviously even less would be a huge pay raise for her. And then they could tell her that they're offering her less based on 3 different issues for her. And my 3 issues is that she needs the additional flexibility and freedom for work, also that she's not quite as willing to travel, and also that she's coming from a boutique setting, just to make sure that she's a good fit for the company in those 3 regards. And then as she proves herself, then continue to increase her pay based on what she's bringing in revenues, because if she's bringing in the revenues, they can justify giving her more money, no problem. And then my thoughts were as well too, is she was talking about not wanting to travel as much, but the reality is so, I mean, I do WebExes all over the world every single day with clients that we have. we don't do a ton of travel to go and see them. And I think with the way that the world is moving, I mean, you can easily set up WebExes and things like that, and that's cutting your costs way down. And so if she's able to accomplish what she needs to primarily through WebExes, she can cut the company's costs considerably down. It'll also cut her time down because she won't have to be traveling as much, so she can be more productive with the time she is spending at the office. And then they can set very clear guidelines with her as to when she does need to be in the office and when she can be working from home. So that way it's very clear up front for her. So anyways, those are my thoughts on hiring her and why.
Anybody have anything else? No? Okay, so do you guys have like a pen and a piece of paper?
Yep.
Because you're going to want to write this down because you're not going to remember if I just tell you. Well, you might. So I'm supposed to tell you what their current salary is and what their salary would be at RS8.
Oh, great.
And then you have to decide if you would still hire that person or not. Okay, so Rena, her current salary is $0.3 million. And her same salary at RSH would stay at $0.3 million. Sonia is $0.4 million. And if she moved to RSH, it would go to $0.7 million. Then Seth is currently making $0.7 million. And if he went to RSH, he would earn $1 million. Gerald is making $0.9 million.
Who's making that?
Gerald?
Gerald. Okay, sorry.
1.2.
Yep. And then David is making 1.3 million. And if he went to RSH, he'd make 1.5.
Wow.
Okay, so that just solidified my opinion even more.
So basically, David is making 5 times more than Rena.
Wow.
But he's worth it at this moment. 5 years from now, he won't. But right now, he's worth it.
So does it?
I like Sonia.
Yep. I'm still 100% sold on what I was thinking.
Anybody else have any other changes?
You know, it's surprising, but I don't think it changes my mind because, I mean, you're paying for talent, you're paying for the best. And I still like the idea of him being the ultimate mentor.
I think it sucks for Rena. I mean, like she gets no more, but everyone else gets a basically 0.3 million, $300,000 increase.
Right.
That's
But,
her.
you know, Rena's name does not appear on that coveted II list.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Well,
But then she can move. She can move to the next company. That's the only thing I guess with Sonia that would scare me is when she finds out she's getting 0.7. I'd imagine that scale would have to go higher rather quickly because people compared. If Seth, Gerald, and David are already making as much or more double her, that salary's got to be going up annually quite a bit.
Yeah.
But you also got to figure they were paying Peter, and Peter was a top star. So they probably have it in their budget.
Well, but they didn't pay him enough.
Well, yeah.
Which is what he left.
But I mean, even if he was making 1.2 and he wanted 1.5, that would be enough for him to go. And technically, I think it talked about in the article, they could have offered him more money and he debated about it, but decided not to. And I think that was the smartest choice to let him go because I don't think he was the right fit for the culture there at the company.
Agreed.
So they might have more in their budget than we think they do based on.
Well, and they did say that Peter was making enough money, they could have offered him more.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it just says, would you change your mind, who you would hire and why? And I think we all said we wouldn't really change our mind. Should Stephen give Rena a permanent offer or hire outside the company? We kind of already talked about that, but I still think we got to give her a raise of some sort.
Yeah, I do too. I think they've got it in the budget. I mean, even if it was, like $20,000 or $50,000, I mean, that's a huge raise for her, I mean,
Well,
not
especially
necessarily.
it depends on who they hire too. I mean, if they're hiring David, that's 1.5 million. I mean,
they don't have the room for it. But if they hire Sonia, they've got the room for it.
Exactly, and she could be her junior.
Yep.
The next question is, should Stephen have let Peter go?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I completely think he wasn't the right fit. He was bringing negativity into the company, and I think it would have just continued to spread had they kept him. So I think it was very, very smart to let him go rather than offering him a raise.
Yep.
Good answer. So should Stephen have talked to the recruiter to ask about Seth?
The
lady that
called. I think he did a good job with that. I think he his approach, and I think waiting was also smart. I it said that he was waiting on edge kind of for Craig to call him back, and I thought he was very patient. I didn't think he rushed any of it. The urgency was there, but Rena did kind of cover that, that let him, without her, he would have just, I don't know what he would have done, but I think he did a good job in everything. He kind of waited. He hired Craig. Eventually everyone found out about it, which is bound to happen. But I think his approach was, he did a very good approach with it.
The only thing I would have done differently is I would have approached Craig and asked him why he didn't include Seth, because maybe he would have had some insight and said, oh, I've heard about him through the industry. He's got this issue or that issue. And so it would have just given him a little bit more clarity in making his decision. So that's the only thing I would have done differently. But I think he did a really great job in, like you said, being patient, waiting, and keeping Rena on so that they weren't so forced into having to make a decision so fast.
Okay, so the next question is, does the performance of the firm guarantee high performance at another firm?
No. Absolutely not. No, that second article talked about that by the time you get a star switched over, they're going to drop like up to 30%, just their productivity right away, because they don't have the same system behind them. They have to get used to everybody else and how things work, and they're going to find out that what was the example? Saks, something about what took an hour for a research analyst to figure out at Saks took 2 full days at the new place. So you never know what you're walking into, and the stars have to realize that, and the company that's taking on these stars have to take that into account, that their star is probably not going to shine as brightly as they did for the company that they just got them from.
Yep.
Which makes sense.
On the other hand, though, I think like Sonia was at a disadvantage because she didn't have people to help her.
Yep.
And so I think her moving to like RSH, she could like do so much more. I mean, it might take her a little while to get caught up to speed, but I think she was limited where she was at. And I think she could, have a greater opportunity at RSH. So.
But she could also have a learning curve. I agree with you in those regards, but she may end up having a learning curve in learning how to delegate. Okay, because she's used to doing it all on her own. And so it might be one of those things where they'll have to come to her and be like, what can I do to help you? What can I take off your plate? Because it might be hard for her at first to delegate.
Right. That was true. Do you guys have anything else to add to that? I don't know if you guys looked at this general human capital and transferability.
Yeah,
that was the second attachment.
Yeah.
Okay. So it just says discuss the types of human capital. I mean, I like one of them is relationship human capital. Like there's people that are so good in like talking to other people and having them, you know, be able to open up and trust them. There's some people that are just really standoffish and you can't really get close to them and you don't, you know, really trust them. So that's kind of what it's talking about, that document. So there was general human capital, strategic human capital, industry human capital, relationship human capital, and company-specific human capital.
Yep. And I think it's basically just talking about what the individual can bring to the company, if I understand it right. So like with company specific, it's if they have specific knowledge in that category that the company's within. Whereas like you were saying, relationship capital, that can go across the board pretty much anywhere because relationships you have everywhere in this whole world. And industry capital is where I think not just that they're specific to that company, but to the whole industry as a whole, because they have experience in it. And then the strategic capital, from what I understood, that one is just basically being able to think strategically and be able to come across a problem and be able to solve problems. So basically my thought is like project managers and things like that, or lawyers where they come across a problem and they have to be able to solve it. The general human capital, I don't know that I really got something there. I don't know if maybe one of you guys has some insight that you could glean my direction as to.
So I don't have that scale in front of me, but I remember reading it. And didn't it had an arrow, and was it like a scale?
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yeah.
it saying like this? Okay,
It says like often at the top and then rarely.
Yeah,
portable.
And it talks about being portable. So basically being able to move it from working at one company to working at another company. How portable is it? And general's at the very top. So it's the most portable.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah. But like in my mind, I guess I was just trying to figure out what general capital is. I mean, I guess just your ability to think keenly, I guess, or not make poor decisions. But I don't know.
It lists like personality traits, and it's saying that those are the things that most people have, and they have, you know, across the board.
It might. Let's see what it says here.
I should go pull it up again.
It is like the general is like they have the most stuff all across the board.
Right.
Okay, so they have the most of all the different ones. Oh, that makes so much sense. Okay, perfect.
Right. And so then the harder it is to find people that's because
that have all that.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. It clicked. Thank you, you guys.
Okay, so here's the grand news of who got the job.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Oh.
They didn't tell us.
Aww.
Oh, man.
I know, right?
I really liked how they summed it up last week. I hope they did that every time.
I know, I did too.
Man.
It said nothing.
Fine.
I was really disappointed.
So that's it. We're done.
Right.
There's no.
Whatever.
Well, I guess we all get to still be friends then. It's okay.
Yeah, but who won?
So kind of the last like question or whatever, it just says kind of sum up the key concepts from this case. That's
I think I don't know. I feel like we've done most of that.
I know.
Yeah, I don't know that there's anything we haven't really.
Take your time when hiring someone. I mean, I don't know.
I was gonna say, I think it just goes to prove that he didn't, oh gosh, my mind is blanking. The guy that was Steven didn't do this on his own. He didn't just go out and say, I'm going to decide all this on my own and I'm going to choose and I'm going to do, I mean, he was very careful, like resourcing out and networking and saying, what do you think? What do you think? And even the involving, you know, not just the recruiters in choosing for him, but then going through the second interview process, and really he was so careful about it, and he had to be fast too. Mm-hmm. So I mean, he's got a lot of, even though it was a rush job, he didn't, just bulldoze through it. He was still very careful about, how he went about the process. So I think that's just a good lesson learned here, is that, no man is an island, and you should never make a decision on your own,
The one thing though that's kind of scared me though is the two guys that were the most qualified were not even, well, David, you chose David, but weren't really on our radar, kind of. I mean, we like David, but so it kind of scares me to think, if you're making a lot of money and you're very successful, does that mean you're going to have job opportunities, or does that kind of eliminate you out of the job opportunities?
Well, I think it depends, because like with David, I eliminated him based on where he was age-wise, and the fact that he was starting to, you could tell he was getting ready to retire. He wasn't taking his phone calls as much. He wasn't traveling as much. He himself, based off his behaviors, was starting to show that. David, I think, or not David, Gerald, he's just cocky, and he's going to get a smack in the face from reality and life that will help him learn how to humble himself, and then he'll be very transferable. I just don't want to be the company he learns that with.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I just think David was like kind of the guy you talk to, and he seemed like very pleasant, but just I don't know. I like I said, initially I wanted to hire him, but then when I found out about Sonia, I just feel like the reward with Sonia was so much greater, that there's so much upside, and to be able to help bring that about, establish that. And, I think she had more, going international, her views were just that much greater. I just think the reward was too great to pass up on her.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think what you guys are describing here on, Jennifer, like you just said about, not even looking at the guys that seems like the obvious choice on paper. I think that's where we put into play that human capital just talked about, where it really does come down to, how does your persona come off to other people? Because you have to work with a team, you have to work with the company. And if that's off-putting, and you are, your personality isn't a good fit for a general amount of people, it is going to be harder to find a good match for you. And I think that's the problem with these other candidates, is that their personalities were just kind of a little off. So
yeah.
Or Gerald could have been, he was confident, but he didn't have to be cocky. And that's the difference. I mean, all of them alluded some sense of confidence. You had to get to this point.
right.
The difference is, great with Gerald, in my opinion. So I think it's lessons learned.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. My brother actually works for the DI, and he helps to help them find jobs. And that's one of his biggest struggles, is he's like, on paper, the people he works with, once they're finished going through the program and everything, they look good on paper, but their social skills sometimes are like really lacking. Like, we were looking to hire somebody new, and so my brother's like, oh, I've got the perfect guy for you. And he starts telling me about him, and he's like, yeah, he's got this skill and that skill and this skill and that skill. And I'm like, what are his soft skills like? How does he do with other people? And he's like, well, he's like, if you keep him in a room by himself, he's a really hard worker, and he does really, really well. And I'm like, that's not realistic. Like, well, he's really talented though. And I'm like, I'm positive he is, but if he has to be in a room by himself because he doesn't get along with anybody else, he can't work at a company. And he's like, I know, I'm trying to help him. But he's like, I'm not sure he's going to get over this. So, I think the soft skills are huge.
It is tough. It's tough to hire people, I think.
Yes, it is. It's so hard.
Yep.
And even after you do all your research, you still, to a certain extent, are taking a gamble with anybody that you bring on. So.
Well, it's like marrying somebody in an hour. I mean, really, because you spend more time with the people you work with than your spouse. So.
Yep.
In an interview to see if you get along, that's really tough.
Yep. However, I will say, if you interview people a lot, that can transfer over into the dating world as too. Because there's times where I've been on dates and they're like, wow, this feels like an interview. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, let me see if I can fix that.
That's awesome. Okay, I think we're done. I'm supposed to thank you for your time and participation. And thanks for being patient with me.
No worries.
No problem.
Calvin, you've got it next week, right?
Yes.
Excellent.
Sounds
Cool.
perfect.
So I don't have to write anything up. I just have to post the link.
Post the link. That's it.
Yep. And then in order to get it to stop, at the very bottom, it should say stop broadcasting. Once you click that button, we will go off of broadcasting and it'll end the recording.
Okay, I'm doing it now.
Go for
Sounds
it.
good.